Jamie Dornan had spent nearly a decade dodging questions, avoiding headlines, and carrying the weight of a story he never actually told. But on this particular day, seated under the bright studio lights, something inside him changed. The interviewer casually mentioned Dakota Johnson, expecting the usual evasive smile. Instead, Jamie tightened his jaw, his posture shifted, and a rare seriousness settled on his face. The entire room sensed it moments before he spoke. "The rumors about Dakota and me are over," he said calmly, yet with a force that silenced the studio. No jokes, no nervous laugh, no attempt to soften the blow. Just a clean, sharp statement, the kind that instantly traveled beyond the building's walls. For a second, the audience didn't react. They didn't breathe. Even the camera operators froze, unsure whether they had just witnessed a world-shifting confession or the final chapter of Hollywood's longest-running mystery. Jamie rarely spoke with such bluntness, and never about Dakota. So the impact of his words hit like a shockwave. Within minutes, the clip went viral. Social media ignited like gasoline catching fire. Some fans screamed that Jamie was finally ending the speculation. Others insisted he was hiding something bigger. Hashtags exploded across every platform, with millions replaying the moment, analyzing his tone, his eyes, even the slight tremble in his hands. The internet didn't know whether to treat his sentence as closure or as a warning that something monumental was coming. But the world didn't know what led him to that seat, or what pressures had been quietly suffocating him. For years, Jamie and Dakota had lived inside a narrative they never wrote. Their chemistry in 50 Shades launched them into global superstardom, but it also trapped them in a never-ending vortex of theories, accusations, and fantasies. Fans insisted they were secretly in love. Tabloids built entire careers off their hidden romance. Every glance, every interview, every behind-the-scenes clip became evidence in a case that never should have existed. Jamie tried to ignore it. At first, he laughed it off. But the deeper he got into his career, the harsher the rumors became. People questioned his loyalty to his wife, Amelia. Others painted Dakota as a homewrecker. Both of them received messages filled with bitterness and speculation. And the hardest part? They couldn't speak the truth without hurting someone, themselves, each other, or the people they cared about. The silence was meant to protect. But instead, it only strengthened the rumors. Behind closed doors, the pressure grew heavier every year. Any project they took part in was overshadowed by whispers of their secret relationship. Jamie's interviews became landmines, and Dakota's public appearances turned into battlegrounds. They both played their roles carefully, maintaining a polite distance while still carrying a bond that was misunderstood by millions. But the past few months pushed things to the edge. Jamie had watched headlines spiral out of control. He saw fan accounts claiming they were secretly meeting. He read misleading articles painting Dakota as an unresolved chapter in his marriage. He even saw a viral video analyzing their soulmate energy, viewed over 50 million times. And through all of it, he stayed silent, until now. On the other side of the country, Dakota Johnson watched the livestream with a stunned expression. She had been scrolling through a script when a crew member rushed up to her with a wide-eyed look. "Dakota, Jamie just said something you need to see." At first, she thought it was another tabloid exaggeration. But when she clicked on the clip and heard his voice, steady, tense, resolute, she felt her stomach drop. She didn't know he planned to say that. He hadn't warned her. But the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. He was tired. Tired of protecting an image. Tired of carrying a decade of speculation. Tired of letting other people write their story. Dakota felt a mix of emotions, relief, confusion, sadness, and something unspoken sitting heavy in her chest. Jamie's words didn't just end rumors. They opened a door. They forced the world to ask, what drove him to finally speak? And what truth was he preparing to share next? As the internet continued to melt down, one thing became clear. Jamie Dornan wasn't done talking. And the world wasn't ready for what he would say next. The moment Jamie's statement swept across the internet, pressure mounted from every direction. Publicists demanded clarification. Journalists begged for exclusive quotes. Fans flooded his social media with conflicting reactions, some thankful he finally spoke, others accusing him of hiding the real story. Jamie remained quiet, but his silence this time felt different. It wasn't avoidance, it was preparation. He knew he owed the world an explanation, but more importantly, he owed one to Dakota. The rumors had never just been noise. They had shaped their lives, their careers, their reputations. Ending them with a single sentence wasn't enough. He had to show the truth behind the words. And so, after hours of pacing alone in his hotel room, Jamie decided it was time to tell the story he had protected for nearly 10 years. The next day, he returned to the same studio for a follow-up segment that producers scrambled to arrange. Cameras rolled, the audience buzzed with anticipation, and Jamie sat forward with a calmness that surprised even himself. The host asked him directly, "What did you really mean when you said the rumors were over?" Jamie exhaled slowly, as if releasing the weight of an entire decade. Then he began. He explained that the rumors didn't just harm his image, they hurt people he loved. His wife felt the strain, his children grew up seeing headlines they were too young to understand, and Dakota faced attacks for something that never happened. The world had created a fantasy, he said, and they both had lived under its shadow for far too long. But he didn't stop there. He finally revealed the truth the internet had twisted for years. Jamie told the audience that his connection with Dakota had always been real, but not in the way people assumed. It wasn't romantic or scandalous. It was human. It was rooted in respect, trust, and emotional survival during a period of overwhelming pressure. He admitted he wouldn't have survived the early years of his fame without her support behind the scenes. Dakota, watching the livestream again, felt her chest tighten. Hearing him acknowledge their bond publicly, in a gentle, honest way, was something she never expected. She didn't feel exposed this time. She felt understood. Jamie continued sharing the parts of the story that had remained hidden. He spoke about the nights on set when he nearly broke under the scrutiny. The days when he feared he wasn't good enough for the role. The moments when he felt he was disappointing everyone, the studio, the fans, his own family. And Dakota was the one who kept him grounded. She shielded him when he was overwhelmed. She listened when he needed to unravel. She reminded him he was more than the character the world reduced him to. That was the truth behind the chemistry people obsessed over, not forbidden romance, but two actors holding each other up through fame that arrived like a tidal wave. The audience in the studio sat motionless, completely absorbed. Jamie had peeled back layers of himself that he'd guarded for years. It wasn't scandalous. It was intimate, and somehow, it was more powerful than any rumor Hollywood could invent. After the interview ended, Dakota finally reached out, a simple message that read, "Thank you for telling them." Jamie stared at those words for a long moment. His reply was just as short, but carried the weight of everything left unspoken. They needed to hear it. Within hours, Dakota released her own response. She confirmed Jamie's words, acknowledging their unusual, deeply personal bond. She admitted that their silence allowed rumors to grow, but she also explained why she chose not to defend herself before, because protecting her own peace mattered more than fighting a narrative she could never control. Hollywood reacted instantly. Some praised their honesty. Some claimed they were hiding the real scandal. Others believed this was the closest thing to closure anyone would get. But for the first time, Jamie and Dakota seemed unaffected by the noise. They didn't owe the world any more explanations. They didn't need to correct every headline. They didn't have to prove or deny anything else. Their story, the true story, had finally been told. And as the dust began to settle, one thing became undeniable. The rumors might be over, but the bond between Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson was something Hollywood would never stop talking about. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't scandalous. It was something far more rare, and that was enough to keep the world watching.